In the far reaches of the galaxy, the Galactic Alliance teetered on the brink of annihilation. Once a proud coalition of dozens of planets and species, they had been beaten back, system by system, by the relentless Xyrith Dominion, a technologically and biologically superior race that fought with chilling efficiency and no mercy. On Charon's Fall, the last bastion of resistance, the ground was littered with the remains of fallen soldiers, shattered weapons, and the burning wreckage of once great cities. The air crackled with energy blasts and the thunderous footsteps of Xyrith war machines, towering constructs of flesh and metal that moved with grim purpose. Alien skies burned crimson as Alliance ships fell from orbit, crashing into the desolation below. Soldiers, human, Virelian, and countless other species, fought desperately, but they were outnumbered, outgunned, and pushed to the edge of despair. In the chaos, General Tyrix, a battle-scarred veteran with silvered scales and weary eyes, stood atop a crumbling defense tower. Clutching a communicator, his voice carried over the battlefield, raw with urgency. To any who can hear me, this is General Tyrix. The last of the Alliance stands here on Charon's Fall. We need reinforcements, any and all who will fight. The Xyrith are at our gates. This is our final stand. In the wake of General Tyrix's desperate call, the skies above Charon's Fall crackled and rippled as an old, heavily armored human fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Battle-worn and bristling with weapons, the ships bore the emblem of a black gauntlet, an unmistakable symbol of the Blackguard Division. The Alliance forces watched in shock and, for many, dread. Legends of the Blackguard preceded them, tales of ruthless efficiency, scorched earth tactics, and the unyielding savagery of their campaigns. At the heart of the Blackguard fleet, the command ship Revenant loomed large. Within its war room, Colonel Eric Tyrannes, a man with deep-set eyes and a face lined with scars, surveyed the battlefield through flickering holodisplays. His presence radiated a cold, unbreakable will forged through countless brutal engagements. Beside him stood Captain Alyssa Morek, his second-in-command, whose sharp mind and calculating gaze missed nothing. She spoke quietly, pointing out weak spots in the Xyrith lines, her tone clipped and precise. The Blackguard's arrival did not inspire immediate relief. When Tyrannes and Morek met with the Alliance leadership in a hastily fortified bunker, tension crackled in the air. General Tyrix, flanked by wary officers, voiced the concern of many. "What do you gain from this?" he demanded. "Humanity left the Alliance years ago." Tyrannes' gaze was unflinching. "We're here to end this war, General. Nothing more, nothing less. But understand this, victory has a cost. We pay it, or we lose." Unease settled over the room, but with no better options, Tyrix nodded. The Blackguard wasted no time. Orders echoed through the command decks. Engines roared as their fleet descended. Soldiers armed to the teeth prepared for battle. The Blackguard Division was mobilizing. For better or worse, the tide was about to turn. Under the cover of night, the Blackguard Division struck. Their target, a fortified Xyrith supply outpost critical to the Dominion's war effort. Moving like shadows through the jagged terrain of Charon's Fall, Blackguard operatives deployed with a grim purpose. At Colonel Eric Tyrannes' command, they unleashed a carefully planned assault designed to cripple the enemy and send a brutal message. Explosions ripped through the air as Blackguard demolition teams targeted fuel depots and munitions caches. The outpost erupted in flames, and panic rippled through the Xyrith ranks. As their forces scrambled to respond, they fell into meticulously prepared kill zones. Booby-trapped corpses exploded upon examination, while false signals and misinformation sowed chaos in their communication lines. Xyrith commanders were singled out and methodically assassinated, their bodies displayed to further demoralize their troops. Captain Alyssa Morek led a strike team into the heart of the outpost. There, they executed a psychological campaign designed to break the enemy's spirit. Survivors were left with messages carved into their surroundings, grim warnings painted in blood. As dawn broke, not a single Zyra soldier remained to contest their victory. The supply lines lay shattered, and the outpost was reduced to ashes. From a ridge overlooking the aftermath, Alliance observers watched in silence. Among them was Liorna the Sin, a diplomat dispatched to monitor and mediate the blackguard's actions. Her face, pale with shock, hardened into anger as she turned to Tyrannis. This isn't war. It's slaughter, she said, voice trembling with a mix of outrage and disbelief. You've abandoned every principle the Alliance stands for. Tyrannis met her gaze with cold, unflinching eyes. Principles? His voice was devoid of emotion. The Zyrath don't care about your principles, the Sin. They'll butcher every one of us without hesitation. I'm here to make sure they don't get that chance. You risk becoming worse than the enemy we're fighting. She spat. A bitter smile played across his lips. There won't be anyone left to judge our methods if we lose. Remember that. The exchange ended in icy silence. Tyrannis turned away, rallying his troops for the next strike. The blackguard would continue their campaign, ruthless, relentless, and feared by all. But the seeds of doubt had been sown, even among their own. The battle began with a whisper of movement through the dense, rocky landscape of Karen's Fall. The blackguard division, masters of guerrilla warfare, positioned themselves with precision. Hidden traps were set, and lines of communication were cut. At the heart of their ambush lay a massive Zyrath battalion, heavily armed and unaware of the storm about to break. At Colonel Tyrannis' signal, chaos erupted. Explosions tore through the Zyrath ranks, splitting their formation. Blackguard operatives emerged from concealment, striking with ruthless efficiency. Their tactics were brutal, disorienting sonic bursts, cloaked infiltrators, and relentless assaults that left the enemy no quarter. Among the carnage, Captain Alyssa Morek spearheaded a daring mission to infiltrate the Zyrath Tactical Command Node, essential to the battalion's cohesion. As her team moved through tight corridors within the enemy's command structure, Morek's memories flashed. Memories of cold steel tables, of being strapped down and subjected to the Zyrath's cruel experiments. She had escaped, but the scars ran deep, fueling her determination. She fought with the ferocity of one who would never be a victim again. Reaching the command node, Morek and her team eliminated the Zyrath commanders in a bloody melee, severing the battalion's ability to coordinate. Outside, the Zyrath lines crumbled, disoriented and leaderless. Victory was theirs, but at a cost. The ground was littered with the bodies of blackguard and Alliance alike, blood mingling with the scorched earth. As the Zyrath retreated, whispers began to circulate among the Alliance ranks. Soldiers, scarred by the brutality they witnessed, asked questions they dared not voice too loudly. "What makes us different from the enemy?" they murmured. "Are we becoming what we hate?" In the aftermath, Tyrannis and Morek stood among the dead, faces grim. They had turned the tide of battle, but they saw the toll it took, the doubts sown, the fear in their allies' eyes. For every victory, a part of their humanity seemed to slip away, and the line between savior and monster blurred further. The Alliance Council convened in a grand chamber carved into the depths of Karen's Fall, tensions running high. Representatives of various species argued fiercely, their voices echoing off the stone walls. At the center of the storm stood Liorna the Sin, resolute in her condemnation. "The blackguards' methods amount to war crimes," she declared, her eyes blazing. "They sow terror and brutality, no different from the Zyrath. We risk becoming no better than what we fight." Her words struck a nerve, alienating many who had once welcomed human intervention. Murmurs spread through the council, fear of the blackguard as much as of the Zyrath. General Tyrix attempted to mediate, but the divisions were clear. Could they afford to keep their ruthless allies? Meanwhile, dissension simmered within the blackguard itself. Younger recruits, shaken by the carnage and whispers of their tarnished reputation, began questioning their purpose. "Are we still protecting the innocent?" one dared to ask, only to be silenced by hardened veterans. The old guard, forged through years of unyielding battle, insisted that survival demanded ruthlessness. Colonel Taranis gathered his soldiers, his voice cold and commanding. Our oath was clear: end the war, at any cost. We stand here because we are willing to do what others cannot. The line between survival and extinction is thin. Some rallied behind him, renewed in their grim determination, but others felt the cracks widening in their unity. Unbeknownst to Taranis, Captain Morek had begun her own quiet campaign. She spoke with younger soldiers, listened to their fears, and sought ways to temper their blood-soaked methods. Deep down, she feared that the blackguard was becoming the very monster they had sworn to destroy, and she would not let that happen without a fight. The Zyrus struck back with a vengeance. A vast fleet descended upon Charon's Fall, blotting out the skies and pounding the surface with relentless waves of artillery and assault drones. Their counteroffensive was precise, coordinated, and merciless, an all-out effort to crush the last stronghold of the Galactic Alliance. The defenders, battered and exhausted, fought desperately, but their lines faltered under the unyielding pressure. Fire and smoke choked the air. Hopes seemed to wither with each passing hour. Amidst the chaos, Colonel Eric Taranis led the blackguard on a daring mission deep behind enemy lines. Intelligence reports confirmed the existence of a Zyrith energy weapon, a device capable of annihilating the entire bastion in one strike. It had to be destroyed. Taranis, Captain Alyssa Morek, and their hand-picked operatives infiltrated the Zyrith encampment, navigating perilous terrain and evading relentless patrols. The mission's success seemed within reach until an ambush shattered their advance. Morek, fighting to protect her comrades, was captured by the Zyrith and dragged into the darkness. The loss hit Taranis hard, reigniting old wounds and hardening his resolve. He became consumed with rescuing her, leading to a brutal escalation in the blackguard's tactics. Civilians were coerced for intelligence, captured Zyrith were subjected to merciless interrogations, and no method was too dark if it brought him closer to his goal. The blackguard's actions grew increasingly ruthless, pushing the limits of what the Alliance could tolerate. Alliance leaders, already wary, now saw the blackguard as a dangerous liability. Within the division, whispers of dissent grew louder. Morek's capture was a rallying cry for some, but for others, it was a warning of how far they had fallen. Taranis, blinded by his obsession, stood at the brink of becoming the very monster they all feared. The Alliance leadership, worn thin from the relentless siege and mounting atrocities, convened in a tense and divided council. With each report of the blackguard's brutal methods, their tolerance dwindled. Finally, they delivered an ultimatum: either the blackguard reform their tactics and operate within the agreed codes of war, or they would be expelled from the coalition. The threat of mutiny, already simmering, threatened to fracture the fragile unity that held the resistance together. Amid this crisis, Captain Alyssa Morek returned. Her escape from the Zyrith had been harrowing, and she carried the scars, physical and emotional, to prove it. But what shocked her most was the darkness she found upon her return. Taranis had become colder, more ruthless, and willing to cross any line in his pursuit of victory. In a private confrontation, she challenged him. "This isn't who we are, Eric," she said, her voice raw. "The people we swore to protect now fear us as much as the enemy. You've lost yourself." Taranis' eyes, once unflinching, flickered with something between anger and pain. Her words struck a nerve. Slowly, reluctantly, he acknowledged how far he had strayed. But his resolve remained ironclad. "One last mission," he vowed. "One final strike to end this war. After that, we can have the luxury of principles." Under the watchful eyes of the Alliance, the blackguard prepared for their final gambit, a chance to end the war, or fall in darkness forever. The assault on the Zyrith Nexus began with fire and fury. The blackguard division and select Alliance forces launched a coordinated strike against the heavily fortified heart of the Zyrith war machine. Above, Alliance ships waged a desperate battle for air superiority, while on the ground, soldiers clashed with monstrous war machines and hordes of Xyroth foot soldiers. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Colonel Eric Tyrannis led one strike team, carving a brutal path toward the Nexus's outer defenses. The blackguard fought with a savagery that bordered on madness, their relentless assault breaking through entrenched Xyroth positions. Every inch gained was paid for in blood, with Tyrannis pushing his men and women to their very limits. Explosions rocked the battlefield, screams and battle cries blending into a deafening cacophony. Soldiers fell, their sacrifices paving the way forward, but the weight of their losses began to strain even the blackguard's hardened resolve. Meanwhile, Captain Alyssa Morek led her own strike team deep into the Nexus's labyrinthine core. Fighting through traps and elite Xyroth guardians, they stumbled upon a horrifying revelation: the Xyroth's strength was not solely their own. Enslaved minds of countless species, wired into grotesque biomachinery, powered their war efforts, feeding the Nexus's energy and command structure. The realization struck Morek and her team like a physical blow. Ending the war was no longer just about victory, it was about liberation. As Tyrannis' forces converged on the central command node, he and Morek met amidst the chaos. "This ends now," Morek urged, her eyes blazing with righteous fury. Tyrannis, weary and bloodstained, nodded. Together, they pushed toward the core, shattering the Xyroth's defenses. The cost was immense: more lives lost, more moral lines crossed, but they pressed on, knowing the galaxy's future depended on their success. The Nexus fell with a cataclysmic roar, its destruction rippling through the Xyroth Dominion's forces. The enslaved minds were freed, and the Xyroth's command structure shattered, leaving their war machine in disarray. Victory was achieved, but the price was steep. The blackguard stood amid the ruins, bloodied, broken, and forever changed by what they had done to win the war. The echoes of their ruthlessness would linger long after the final shot had been fired. In the aftermath, the Alliance convened. Weary and battered, its leaders grappled with the moral cost of their triumph. Accusations of war crimes and atrocities were leveled at the blackguard, their ruthless methods laid bare for all to see. Yet others spoke in defense, arguing that without their brutal resolve, the war would have been lost, and countless lives sacrificed to Xyroth tyranny. The debate raged, but one truth was clear: the blackguard's legacy was as complicated as it was decisive. Colonel Eric Tyrannis stepped forward, weary and resigned. He offered his surrender, willing to face justice for his actions. "I did what had to be done," he said, voice heavy with the weight of his choices. "Now let the galaxy judge." Captain Alyssa Morek stood by his side, defiant and resolute. She vowed to fight for a fair reckoning, hoping to preserve whatever shreds of humanity remained in the wake of their dark path. Together, they awaited the uncertain fate that lay ahead. Months passed, and the galaxy began to heal from the scars of war. The Blackguard Division was formally disbanded, its members scattered and reintegrated into society under the watchful eyes of the Alliance. Some found new paths, others struggled to shed their past, but all carried the weight of what they had done. On Charon's fall, a grand memorial was unveiled, bearing the names of the fallen, Alliance and Blackguard alike. It stood as a solemn reminder of the price paid for victory. Liorna the Sin, now a leading peace advocate, stood before the assembled crowd. Her voice, once sharp with accusation, now carried the tempered tones of reflection. She spoke of the fragile line between justice and vengeance, of the lessons learned through blood and sacrifice. "May we honor their memory by building a better future," she concluded, eyes heavy with the past. Among the attendees, Colonel Eric Tyrannis and Captain Alyssa Morek, now stripped of their ranks, stood side by side. As civilians, they had chosen a quieter path, seeking to atone for the choices that haunted them. Walking away from the ceremony, they spoke softly of atonement and rebuilding. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, there was a fragile hope in their words, a belief that even in the darkest of moments, the human spirit could find a way to rise again.